Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Chamber's CEO Leadership Series. I am Sherry McNamara. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to present to you this leadership series presented by Southwest Airlines and the future of travel in 2021 and beyond, with special guests, Tom Nealon, President of Southwest Airlines, and star journalist Allison Schaefers of the Honolulu Star Advertiser. I think we've all been wondering what the future of travel looks like, and some of you have been regular travelers and maybe not, but 9 months later, we're thinking, what's ahead of us? What does travel look like? And so I'm sure that you are looking forward to this discussion to see what Tom's insight is as for Southwest Airlines and the future of travel. So Tom is here joining us from Texas. So thank you, Tom, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So before we get started, of course, we're going to go over some housekeeping items. For all the attendees, please join us in listen-only mode and keep your mics on mute. In the interest of time, we will have Q&A at the very end of the panel discussion. And if you have questions during today's presentation, click on the Q&A button on the bottom of your toolbar. And for those joining by phone, you can email your questions to Tricia at tfetui, F-E-T-U-I, @cochawaii.org. Those questions will be reviewed at the end of the presentation. Also, the webinar is being recorded and the video link will be emailed to attendees 1 to 2 business days after the session. And then finally, we encourage you to save the date and join us from January 18th through the 22nd for the annual Chamber Week series. The 2021 Chamber Week series will be virtual on Zoom this year due to the global pandemic, and we look forward to delivering the same level of engagement and education that you are receiving at in-person events, but in a virtual environment. More information will be available soon. So before we get started, we're going to do a poll. And the question of the poll is, how does the future of travel impact your business? The options are 1, overall economic driver for economy, 2, staff travel, 3, goods and cargo, 4, service, 5, tourism, or 6, other. We'll give you several seconds. I can't see it on my end, unfortunately.
Did we lose Sherry?
Okay, there might be some technical difficulties, so we will, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Sorry, I lost it. 1, overall economic driver for economy, overwhelmingly. Well, thank you very much for taking the poll. So to segue now to the panel discussion to address that, as well as the future of travel, Allison, I'm turning it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Hi, Tom. Welcome back.
Well, thank you.
So everybody, it's been about a year since well, a little bit more than that since I've seen Tom. He was scheduled to come and address you last March, but the pandemic got in the way. So
Well, can I
it's
tell you
been about 9 months since the Southwest leadership team represented you here at the leadership series.
All right, so let me tell the story about that though. So I'll be quick.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, please.
So you and I met on March 17, 2019. It was our first day of operation to Honolulu. And you interviewed me in the hold room at the airport. And
That's
I
right.
came back on March 3rd, roughly a year later. And at that point, we had all 5 stations up and running: Lahui, Hilo, Kona, Maui, Honolulu. We had them all running. We'd had our teams were in place. I was kind of doing a station visits, community visits, all that kind of stuff. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, in fact, Kelly, you recall this, I called you. 4 o'clock in the morning, my phone rang, and this was, again, March 3rd. And the message was, you need to get back to Dallas right away. And at that point, what we were seeing was our bookings were down 95%. Our cancellations were up, 500%, that kind of thing. And it was just it was a mess, right? So I had to get back before flights were canceled. I couldn't get back. But I will tell you that in that first year, right? So from March 17th of 2019 through the visit in early March, this may be a startling statistic, but I was kind of surprised by it. We carried over 3 million passengers to and from Hawaii, which is pretty amazing. In 1 year of operation, that was 17,000 flights. So, and that was while we were still building up our network and our capacity and such. So, we were really excited about Hawaii back then, and we are really excited about Hawaii now. So,
Well, that's awesome. We're all glad to hear that. What actions, though, have you had to take in the last 9 months in order to stabilize and or to try to get to a stabilization time? And what's it going to take to get you into 2021 and beyond here in Hawaii and elsewhere?
Well, this has been absolutely an incredible year. I mean, for everybody. It's not just for the airlines; it's for shopkeepers, restaurant owners, so everyone's been impacted. But we've certainly been impacted as well. And I think that when we came into the pandemic, we were actually in pretty good shape. So actually, very good shape, the best in the industry in terms of the strength of our balance sheet. We had very low debt. We had ample liquidity, or so we thought. For normal operations, we had plenty of liquidity. So we were on solid financial footing at that point. And as this hit, what became very clear was, as good as our balance sheet was and as low as our debt was, we needed to raise cash. We needed to have a lot of liquidity. So again, given the strength of the balance sheet and our investment grade credit rating, we were able to go to the market and raise our cash fairly quickly, although it was a massive amount of work. So I think the 2 or 3 big phrases in my mind in terms of airlines right now is balance sheet strength, liquidity, and cash burn. Right. So profits, we'll get to profits when we get to profits, but right now it's about liquidity and minimizing your cash burn. And I think we've done a really nice job of that. We've had to take a lot of capacity out. We have 753 aircraft, if I'm not mistaken, and we probably have 150 or so parked right now. Okay, so we have a lot of aircraft, a lot of capacity, a lot of cost parked on the ground. But that's what we need to do. There's just not enough demand for it at this point. So we've had to do a lot of things in terms of how do you handle that with staffing. So, we have offered voluntary separation programs and got a lot of takers on that. We had extended time off options, all voluntary. We had a lot of takers on that. And we've reduced our cash burn by nearly $3 billion this year. And you take all the capital expenditures and such, and it's probably an $8 billion reduction. So we've been really focused on getting our cash burn down and preserving cash. That's probably one of the biggest things that we had to do. And the other thing you had to do was to figure out how do you keep flying and make sure that people are safe flying, whether it's employees, not weather, but employees and customers, which is where you get into the whole discussion around the Southwest Promise and the cleaning of aircraft, how safe are the aircraft, and so on and so forth. And there's a tremendous amount of work there. And we made the very intentional decision to not sell the middle seats for I guess May 1st until December 1st. And that was the right thing to do. And we decided to sell the middle seat beginning this past Monday, if I'm not mistaken, the 1st of December. So that's Tuesday, I guess. And that was only based on the medical research that had been done. So, we've had to make a lot of changes to the operation. I'm really proud of what we've done. I'm really proud. In fact, what's interesting, Allison, is our customer scores are the highest they've ever been, and our operational performance is the best it's ever been. So, the Southwest people have really, and I'm not surprised by this, the Southwest people have rallied. That's just what we do. That's the heritage of Southwest. They're fighters. And we rallied. So I feel really good about where we are with that.
Absolutely. So I know that the people of Southwest are very important to you, Tom. And I know that they've played an incredible role. This is another kind of startling statistic for folks who don't know, but Southwest has had a 49-year legacy of profits, and it's had such solid positioning that it's never had to make an involuntary layoff or furlough in those 49 years. So I'm wondering, you know, as we hit this period, you've taken all those other steps, but what's in store for these employees and Southwest legacy? Is that going to come to an end, the 49 years of profits and the no involuntary layoffs or furloughs?
Well, you know, our legacy, I don't think our legacy is that we've been profitable for 49 years. I think our legacy is that we've always had to fight through adversity, right? I mean, just before we even started flying, we had to, you know, we were in court for years just to have the right to fly. So our legacy is not the profitability, that's a result of our legacy. And I'd say our legacy is really one of warrior spirit. I'd say our legacy is one of incredible culture. I'd say our legacy is one of sustaining a low cost culture and orientation. And the output of that has been profitability. This year, you know, we've never faced a pandemic. I mean, just to give you some context, what we are dealing with today, the level of air travel today is what it was back in the 1970s. Okay, just to put some context around it. So we've never dealt as a country with a pandemic of this scale, much less as an industry or as a company here at Southwest. So our legacy is not one of 49 years of profitability. That's an incredible run. It's an incredible performance, but the legacy is really tied to the heart and soul of the people. And that's the warrior spirit of Southwest. I don't think our legacy is being broken with a year of unprofitability. I think this is going to be the next chapter in the legacy of Southwest. I think it's going to be the most exciting chapter in the legacy of Southwest. So it's all about the people. It really is.
Okay.
So in terms of where we are, you know, with the, you know, we've never had a furlough at Southwest. And the reality of where we are today, you know, we promised our employees, as this whole thing began earlier in the year, that we would not have furloughs, we would not have pay cuts in 2020. And we certainly didn't have any view into how long this is going to go on for. Right? And I don't second guess our decision, by the way, at all. It's the right thing to do. But yeah, at some point, if we aren't seeing the end to this, we've got to begin to have some discussions around, you know, our biggest costs are our people. And they're worth every nickel. Right? And what we've asked our people to do is, and keep in mind, we are heavily unionized. So 85% of our employees are union employees. And they're Southwest employees first, but they're also union members. And what we've asked them to do is to take a 10% pay cut for 1 year with the guarantee of no furlough, and also the guarantee that the compensation would snap back after 12 months. We also promised that if the government PSP or payroll support program comes back, you know, kind of PSP 2.0, then, you know, we're done talking about furloughs and such. But our intent was never to furlough. It's not to furlough. Our intent is to work with the union groups on finding ways, whether it's through work rule changes or through revenue generation, but through a myriad of ways to get to a 10% savings. And, you know, we've had success with some union work groups, and we're still in negotiations with others, and it's challenging, it's hard. So, but, you know, plan A is not to furlough and hopefully to get the government support. But, you know, if we need to do it, we'll have to do that. And it's something that I know Gary and myself and Mike Vandeven and our senior most team think about every minute of every day. It's the last thing we want to do. But we also need to make sure that Southwest Airlines, you know, is a sustained great company. So, you know, it's a hard thing. It's a very hard thing.
Absolutely. Well, I know that there are a lot of CEOs watching today, and because Southwest is the most heavily unionized airline in the world, I wonder if you have some advice for them, given that, you know, this business environment is changing so quickly and requires a rapid and nimble response. How do you navigate the collective bargaining requirements in a way that can get you to where you need to be as quickly as you need to be?
Yeah, I'm really not one to be giving a lot of advice, but I'll tell you what I think. All right. So I think the first thing is you got to communicate a lot, and I think that we've really tried to communicate a lot, right? So I give a lot of credit to my boss, to Gary Kelly, our CEO, as well as the rest of the team. We communicate a lot, exactly where we are, exactly what the issues are, exactly what the challenges are, and we try to explain where we are. You have to lead by example as well. I mean, we're all not, we are not asking our employees to do something that we aren't doing to an even greater degree. And that's just, you got to lead by example. So, I think that's the only advice I give is communicate a lot, be very transparent, be very honest, and don't ask anyone to do something that you wouldn't do. And that's where we are.
Okay, great. Well, as I look back, Southwest has had some aggressive growth plans for Hawaii, and you've also had quite a few challenges. In the very beginning, your plans are interrupted by the FAA's grounding of the 737 MAX. That's finally been lifted, I believe, as of November 18th. And I know earlier you saw those MAX planes as a way to add longer haul routes to your Hawaii lineup. Do the MAX planes still have an eventual role to play in the future here? And what could that mean for Hawaii?
So you're right. You're bringing up all these wonderful topics. There's been a lot that's happened. This has been a very interesting 2 years or so, 3 years actually. The MAX absolutely has bearing on our Hawaii strategy and on our Hawaii network. The first job is for us to get the MAX back into the air. So it has been ungrounded. That does not mean that you get the ungrounding the next day you're flying. There's a lot of work to do to get the planes back in shape. There's a lot of maintenance work, although maintenance has continued on the MAX aircraft, even though they were grounded, throughout this whole thing. But there's work to do with our pilots in terms of training, the flight operations manuals and procedures. So there's a lot to be done still. But we certainly think that by late first quarter, early second quarter, we'll be putting the MAX back into revenue service. So what does that mean for Hawaii? Well, there's one more step that has to be done with the MAX for Hawaii, and that is the MAX needs to be certified for what's called ETOPS flying, which is extended operations flying, which is over the water kind of flying. So that's a process that we had to go through with the 737-800, and it's the same process we'll go through with the 737 MAX 8. And so that'll take a little bit of time. But I'm not concerned about that. It's just going to take a little bit of time. But as we begin to serve Hawaii with the MAX, I'm not suggesting or not committing this is the plan, but the MAX does have the range to go beyond California. So the MAX does have the range for Denver, for Phoenix, for Vegas. So this is a great aircraft that's very fuel efficient, which gives it the range. So, whether or not we choose to begin to fly from those locations into Hawaii just depends on what we think the market opportunity is and the size of the market and the profitability of the market. But we certainly have an aircraft in the fleet that is capable of doing that. And, it makes perfect logical sense. We just need to look at what's the best utilization for the MAX aircraft. But I think Hawaii is a pretty good opportunity for us.
Okay, great. Well, one of the things though, the challenge you're going to have with the MAX, just like the challenge that you have with COVID-19 is in some ways it's a travel demand dampener. So just wondering, what you're going to do to increase consumer confidence in flying in general right now, and then on getting on the MAX planes.
Okay, let me go flying in general first, and we'll talk about the MAX. So flying in general, hopefully, since we're still flying, as you guys know, we have not stopped service at any of our Hawaii locations, but we've put in place the Southwest Promise. So you guys familiar with the Southwest Promise? I hope you are. So the Southwest Promise is our response to how do we keep our employees safe and how do we keep our customers safe while they're flying. And it covers a myriad of things, but I could probably boil it down. There's the obvious things in the airport in terms of the plexiglass and the distancing and that kind of stuff. The aircraft, though, actually, before you got on the aircraft, we changed our boarding processes to spread that out. But on the aircraft, we're doing tremendous amounts of cleaning of the aircraft. And there's kind of 3 stages. There's the, every 20-day stage, which is a deep disinfecting. It's quite a process. Every night, every aircraft in our fleet is cleaned for over 7 hours. Right? Now multiply that times 700 aircraft. That's a lot of hours. So they are deep cleaned and sanitized, and then between flights, right? So we're doing a tremendous amount of cleaning of the aircraft and just keeping them sanitary. Then you have the air filtering, and this is stuff that most people didn't really think about. I think, in fact, it was funny. I was talking to my kids about the air filtration on the aircraft, and my youngest one thought that, well, when the door closes, the air is the air. That's all you have. And I didn't tell her this, but I was thinking to myself, well, if that's the case, we'd all be unconscious by the time we landed. There's not enough oxygen, right? So, clearly the plane is being refreshed with fresh air. Every 2 to 3 minutes, the air is completely recycled, and it's being filtered with a HEPA filter, which is the same filtration that they use in hospitals and operating rooms. So I feel like we're doing a lot in terms of the safety and the confidence building for the general population. Then you have the mask policy. So all that to say, we're very aware of what our customers' concerns are, who's comfortable, who's not down to the individual, but in terms of broad brush. And, when the whole pandemic began, it was probably 30-70, 30% saying, I'm still comfortable, somewhat comfortable to very comfortable, 70% saying, I'm not so comfortable at all, I'm not flying. And that's completely flipped to 70-30. Now, I will tell you that in the past few weeks with the surge, it's gone down a little bit, but still, mid 60s positive. I'm comfortable flying. Some are a little more tentative, right? But people are comfortable or getting more comfortable. I think it's more a question of, it's not so much the travel, it's when I get there, is anything open? I think that's as much of a depressant on air travel as anything. That's what we do hear a lot of is, well, when I get there, the vineyards are closed, the beaches are closed. But the air travel itself is not the overriding concern. Now jumping to the MAX. Can I jump to the MAX, or is there anything you want to follow up on that?
No, I'll get it in the next question.
All right. So with respect to the MAX, what's interesting is it's kind of been out of sight, out of mind somewhat, but it's beginning to reemerge in terms of people's awareness of the MAX. But even there, we asked the question, are you more or less likely to fly? And we're doing massive amounts of research, whether it's COVID or whether it's the MAX. So our poor consumer researchers are just exhausted. But we asked the question, are you more or less likely to fly Southwest because of the MAX? And 70%, no change. 15%, I'm actually more likely. And their rationale, you can see it in the comments, their rationale is, surely this is going to be the safest plane ever built, right? At this point, right? With all the validation and such, which by the way, I believe is true. And 15% say I'm less likely, right? So it's not a terrible distribution, if you will, right? So our focus right now is to start with our employees and make sure that our employees are comfortable. Our pilots are fantastic. They were ready to fly it the whole time. In fact, we had over 90,000 flights on the MAX, or I'm sorry, 40,000, 90,000 cycles on the MAX. Our pilots love the plane. It's a great plane. Our flight attendants, their view is if our pilots tell us they're good to go, we're good to go. And they really believe that. But our focus right now is to get our employees understanding what's transpired, where we are, and they have to have confidence, because if they don't have confidence, the customer's not going to have confidence. So we're working first, as we always do, employee first, customer second, shareholder third. So we're working with our employees, and that will translate into our customers having confidence. And our communications team obviously has got a tremendous amount of information out there for consumers, just in terms of the MAX and the safety and such.
Okay.
So we're going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you talked a little bit about one of the issues with travel was the concern about what can I do when I get to a destination.
Right.
So in Hawaii, of course, we've got that, but we've got the added challenge of we've implemented rules and regulations that make us, it's some of the nation's toughest requirements. So I'm just wondering, from a business perspective, how difficult has it been to implement those Hawaii strategies? How has it hurt the bottom line? How has it affected morale? And, how is it affecting consumer demand? How do you sell that?
Well, navigating Hawaii's quarantines, I guess phase 1, phase 2, we're kind of in phase 3 and 3.5, right? There's a lot going on. The initial quarantine, which is the 14-day quarantine, I mean, it shut down travel. I mean, people just weren't, so we saw, virtually no travel. Even with that, though, the question was, is Southwest going to stop serving Hawaii until the restrictions were lifted? I'm sure that was probably a concern that some of you may have had. And we chose not to do that. And we chose not to do it for a couple of reasons. One is, we've got 325 employees over there, and about half of those are local hires, and they're part of the family. And we're not going to shut down service because we're having an interruption right now. The second thing, or the second reason was, once we go into a market, our intent is to support that market and to serve that market. And there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times, and this is one of the bad times. This is clearly a bad time. But you don't just pull up your stakes and leave because things are hard. And we certainly didn't want to send that signal to the communities within Hawaii that, here's this mainland airline, if things get bad, they leave. Well, we're not leaving. We're in, and we're part of the community. So that's kind of how I think about it. And back to, I guess, the core of your question, which is, how hard is it to navigate the different restrictions? Hawaii is the most challenging. I mean, it really is. I mean, I've traveled to New York. They have travel restrictions. I've traveled to Massachusetts. They have travel restrictions in Washington, D.C., restrictions, Chicago. But there's very, very different degrees of enforcement, right? I mean, Hawaii, you guys put restrictions in, you're serious. So, and it's been hard. In fact, I honestly, just to be completely transparent with you guys, there's been so much change around the Hawaii requirements. I actually had to sit down with the team yesterday to get briefed on, okay, tell me exactly where we are now, because it's changed so frequently. So I've got a little deal in front of me someplace, right here, right? Just keeping track. So there's just so many different locales with different requirements. So, I think, it has been pretty challenging. And just today, in fact, you've probably seen that, with the 14-day quarantine in Kauai, we've had to pull down service. So we're not stopping service, but we've had to pull it down. So the mainland flying, we had to stop, and we've taken the inter-island down to 1x, 1 times a day. So, our intent is to restore that, but, there's no reason to fly it other than for a little bit of cargo, bring things in and taking things out, but there's virtually no one flying, right? So we're gonna be, flying loads of half a dozen people, maybe, so that's not sustainable. And then you have the Hilo and Kona post-arrival testing, which is, another unique element. And, to be honest with you, I'm not complaining, I'm not whining. I understand what Governor Ige needs to do and what he's trying to do, and what the state government is trying to do. So I'm really sympathetic. But you ask the question, is it hard for us? Yeah, it is. But again, we're not whining or complaining. The thing that would be helpful is as much advance notice so we can adapt, so we can adjust, so we can notify our customers. And I think that, our customers actually, I think, have been less disrupted by all this than the other carriers' customers, simply because, their distribution model is different. So they may go through an Expedia or, a different online travel agency. Well, to book Southwest, you come through Southwest, and we walk you through the entire process. And we send you a 30-day email and a 4-day email and a 2-day email and a day before email. We tell you exactly what to have. We tell you what you have to get into the state, and what the process is going to look like, and where to go to get your testing done, who's been approved by the state for testing, trusted partner program. So, we've been all over this. We have a team dedicated largely to Hawaii right now because of just the complexity of it. So again, it's not a complaint. It's just, it's an understanding of what you guys are dealing with. But, the answer to your question directly, yeah, it's difficult. Your question about morale, no, it doesn't impact our morale. You're talking about our morale? I guess another way of asking is it our morale or our commitment to Hawaii? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I mean, from an employee standpoint, sometimes if you're an employee in Hawaii, that might be a little bit of the same thing. You might be worried about your job. You might be worried about the challenges.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I haven't talked to our Hawaii employees since I did a video to them a few weeks ago. So I haven't talked to them directly. We have great leaders there, and I love our teams there. I'm sure their morale's a little down, but I also want them and you all to know that our commitment to Hawaii hasn't languished at all. I think Hawaii still, in spite of what we're all going through, I think Hawaii is getting hit harder than most of our other locations, for a myriad of reasons. But I think Hawaii's been hit harder. But that doesn't dissuade us from our commitment to Hawaii one bit. It's going to come back.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. So I think I'm hearing that the Love airline is not going to love us and leave us. But what makes us worth it, and relationships are two-way streets. So what support do you need from government officials and businesses here to get through these lean times in Hawaii and stay with us?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think we got a great relationship with HDOT. I think the governor's office and his chief of staff and the whole team has been phenomenal. So I think we have a great relationship with the airports, with HDOT, the whole thing. I will tell you though that as we launched the Long Beach to Honolulu, believe it or not, in fact, really at every station, we're going to be out of capacity, right? So we're going to need to be at some point. This is not a request. Once we have this request, we'll work with the proper groups. But at some point, if we want to continue to grow, we're going to have to expand our facilities, which I think is good news, right? So, but that's not where we are today. But in the future, that's going to be something we have to address. But we're just to kind of close it out. We're still very bullish on Hawaii. It's going to recover. You guys are going to recover, and so we'll be there.
Do you think, one of the things that has come out of this pandemic is one of the harder hit segments has been business travel, but leisure markets don't have quite the same constraints at the moment. Is there some additional room for Hawaii to recover in the nearer term because of that, or or all of the restrictions around travel to Hawaii, does that kind of take that out of consideration?
I think it's going to be interesting to see. There's really positive news. You guys are reading the same things that we're reading. Although, we're actually talking with a lot of people very, very close to all this, vaccine work. I think there's a lot of really positive work going on, a lot of news and reason to be optimistic about the vaccine. And I guess it's to be seen how quickly it is deployed. It's going to be seen how effective the administration, the execution of the supply chain and the administration of the shots are. And it's going to be seen what the uptake is within the population of who's willing to get the vaccine. I hope it's positive on all fronts. And I think that will impact, as much as anything, what the state of Hawaii determines as the right course of action to begin to lift or maintain restrictions in place. But I think a lot of it's going to be dictated by what you're seeing and what we're all seeing as a population. I do think that leisure travel, I think that Hawaii would certainly benefit quicker than other locales, just because it's much, much more of a leisure destination than a business destination. I think leisure, we could have an incredible back half of next year. I really do have some optimism and reason for optimism that the vaccine is going to be effective and that we're going to get this deployed. And I think there's tremendous pent-up demand. And I could tell you right now, there's a lot of demand for Hawaii travel, a lot of demand. Not a lot of bookings because of the restrictions, but I can tell you, my team can tell you how many searches are there for Hawaii, and they go right to the travel restriction page. So there's a lot of pent up demand. So people want to come back to Hawaii. And it's just a question of when does the state government feel like it's time to begin to loosen. I'm not advocating for loosening. I'm advocating for just, do what you think is right. And, we'll be there when you're ready. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it.
So, COVID has forever changed, well, at least in the near term, has changed the way that we travel. And I'm wondering what changes you think will become a part of our future, kind of much like TSA emerged out of 9/11. I'm just wondering what you think we may see lingering long after the COVID challenge.
We talk about this a lot. I talked about the Southwest Promise earlier and the mask policy, and we had open middle seats. We're doing a lot of extra cleaning, all of which is I mean, that all takes a lot of time and costs a lot of money. And the question is, that's just an example. How much of that is going to remain in place? And the open middle seat could not stay in place for any airline, for any, we did it for 9 months, 8 months. And at some point, if the science is there that tells you it's safe, you gotta begin to sell it because you can't make money and break even, right? So you got, so that you can't sustain that. The masks, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see, do people continue to wear masks in the future while traveling, not every day, walking around. I think that could be something we see. I think one of the things that I think is going to be interesting, I think the airplane cleaning, you will see that is something that will continue, right? There are degrees of that, but you will see that continue, I do believe. I think one of the things that may be different and new that is still taking shape is contact tracing and this whole notion of, a health passport. And I think there's more of a likelihood of that for international travel than domestic, but I would not foreclose that as being something that's considered domestically as well. But that's very early stage in my mind. I'm not really sure where that goes, but I do think there'll be some sort of health passport for international travel. So.
And you think that would be more for international rather than domestic travel?
I think so, but as I said, I think I would not preclude that from being something that at some point is done domestically, but I don't see that as being a high likelihood.
Well, I know TSA developed national travel security protocols that helped America reopen travel after 9/11. Do you think at some point we may see a national COVID response or medical response in the future? And what do you think that might look like?
Well, I'm not really sure what to think of a national medical response. All cards on the table, we really haven't seen one to date. Right? I mean, obviously Operation Warp Speed with the vaccine development was very much a national response, but in terms of the day-to-day execution and alignment of priorities and tactics, if you will, it's been very patchwork. And I think that one of the things that's very difficult for us as an airline and for the industry is trying to navigate this patchwork of local requirements. It's untenable. So as an example, if you ever require a restriction, just whatever it is, in Massachusetts, what happens when that flight crew flies in and has to spend the night? Are they quarantined for 14 days and they're supposed to fly out the next morning? So there's all sorts of complicating factors that make it very difficult. So I think that to the degree that you can get to some level of consistency, you can begin to build process and structure around. That's an important thing for all of us as an industry. But I'm not sure. You see the TSA, and I remember traveling on 9/11, and walking on the plane was a very different experience than walking off the plane, and it never went back. And I don't know that we'll see that kind of change to that extent, but I do think that you'll see more change around contact tracing and perhaps some sort of health passport.
Okay, and I know that you're kind of you came from a technology background side, so I'm just wondering what technology and innovation have you seen springing out of the COVID challenge thus far, and what you think we may see in the future in terms of technology and innovation that could make us a little safer?
Well, I think some of it's going to be COVID driven, and some of it's just the natural rate of progression of technology. It's just accelerated so much. I think, from a COVID standpoint, I think you're going to see all of us doubling down on self-service type of capabilities, touchless, interactions with kiosks, touchless interactions with ticket agents. Instead of showing handing over your driver's license, is going to be digital, and things of that nature, QR code transmissions. So I think you're going to see a lot of self-service. I think you're going to see more adoption of biometrics. Anything that takes the need for handing over a document to somebody, that will go away in time. So I think that will be the most overt thing you see, is the contactless and touchless self-service, which I think is good from a customer standpoint because it's going to be easier and more dynamic, more fluid, and it's going to be better from a business standpoint because it's less expensive. right? You have to make the investment, but it's just much more efficient for you. So that, I think from a customer travel experience perspective, actually on the plane, I'm not sure I expect to see anything much different at this point. An awful lot of that really depends on the aircraft. So I think that's less of a COVID thing, honestly.
Okay, well, I'm getting a 5-minute warning. So are there some, any last minute thoughts that you have, Tom, that you wanted to share with us? And particularly about what you think the future of travel looks like in general and in Hawaii would be great if you could just.
Well, I think the most relevant message for this group, for this audience is, in 1 year, what I said, we flew 13 million passengers to and from your home. And, we are looking to do a lot more than that. We're looking to grow our Hawaii presence, our Hawaii offering. It's all going to be metered and measured in terms of where demand is. But, Southwest is a competitor, and Southwest is a fierce competitor. We also have a huge heart, right? So I think that the culture matches very, very nicely with the Hawaiian culture. And so that's where we're going. I think, I think one of the things that's been a benefit to everyone has been the Southwest effect. So when Southwest comes into a market, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the term the Southwest effect, but what it really means is that when Southwest enters a market, the service level increases and the fares drop dramatically. And that has played out, once again in Hawaii. So I hope that you all feel like you're getting a great product from Southwest. I hope you feel like we are committed to all of you, and because we are. And so I just probably stop there. And I've been talking all morning, so I need to drink some of my tea.
Okay, so I think that there's some audience Q&A now. Let me go ahead and take a look at these. So we've got, let's see here. A couple of questions that people are asking is they're wondering how Southwest is working with the state of Hawaii to comply with COVID testing. And is there any effort at the federal level to create safeguards around travel?
Well, at the federal level, there are several things that were largely COVID related specifically. At the federal level, there were several things that were largely focused on international travel. They've slowed a little bit. So there's some activity, but not a lot. In terms of how is Southwest interacting with the state of Hawaii, we have a customer experience team led by one of our managing directors who's an absolute star. And we have a government affairs team. They're working together, and we have a communications team. And I think we're working really closely and tightly, especially as we're getting to this trusted testing partner dynamic. We had to figure out how are we going to make that work. And we worked closely with the state, and they were actually pretty not overly accommodating, like giving us a pass, but they were really helpful in helping us set up our capabilities. And I think that we helped them and kind of said, okay, from an operator standpoint, that's not going to work. Here's how you might want to. I think it was a good two-way deal, but I think we worked really closely. In fact, it was funny, the team who briefed me, because I was really thinking, okay, I think I'm really current on Hawaii testing, but where exactly are we? I was stunned at the level of detail. These guys they are so deep into this, and they're really good. But the answer is, I think we're working very, very tight with Hawaii and all this.
Okay, great. Southwest has a reputation for great employee engagement. How do you keep employees engaged during this difficult time? Are they still joking on all the planes when you go in? Is it still that party time?
The reason I'm pausing is because our people are just so great, right? It just kind of, sometimes I wonder, like, wow, how do we keep this going? And the answer, I think it really, and I talk about this a lot, but the answer is, this is what we were given as a company by our founders, and it's part of who we are. It's part of our inheritance, and it's this culture. And to some extent, it's self-reinforcing. where if you are a Southwest employee and you hear the history and you hear the stories and you hear the struggles and the successes of the prior generation and what's expected, it carries to the next generation. And they understand this is what makes us so different, so unique, and it carries to the next generation. So I think part of it is self-fulfilling because you don't want to disappoint. There's an expectation that when you put on that Southwest uniform, you know, you're Southwest. But I also think we put a lot of effort into it. I mean, we have culture blitzes. We spend a lot of time in the field. There's a lot of tradition at Southwest, a lot of storytelling at Southwest, a lot of imagery at Southwest in terms of pictures. And so the culture is constantly being reinforced, and it's somewhat self-governing. I mean, people don't want to disappoint. And, you know, I really do think our people provide the finest hospitality and customer service, not just in airlines, but anywhere. And it's just because they're so kind. It's not because they're the most fancy and all that kind of stuff. They're very down to earth. They're very real, and they're very kind. And that's the kind of people we have. And it's pretty awe-inspiring for me, honestly.
That's terrific. I'm hearing also one of the attendees wants to know what Southwest Airlines policies are in regards to the COVID-19 pre-testing program. So I'm guessing that has to do with, you know, making the news today. We had a case where a couple boarded a United plane and they had COVID. They knew they had COVID. And so we've had some of those challenges just recently. And I'm guessing that might be more what the attendee wants to know. How are you helping police that, enforce that, stick within the parameters?
You know, it's difficult because we're not a health provider, and you know, it'd be very difficult for us to require every passenger to take a COVID test before getting on our plane. I just don't know how we would do that. I don't know how that would happen.
Are you asking passengers questions? So United actually had a form, and I guess they must have filled it out falsely because it asked if you've been exposed to COVID or if you've had COVID or, you know, those types of things. There are limits, I guess, to what an airline can do, but what would be the?
But we're doing that as well. I think every airline that I'm aware of, every major airline, has some sort of health declaration saying, "Listen, have you been exposed?" And to some extent, it is the honor system. Unless you have, a tester at every jet bridge, I'm not sure how you would do that, right? So, no, I think Hawaii is. I guess that happened in Hawaii. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was actually a Hawaii couple coming back to Kauai of all places. So they found out they were COVID positive and boarded the plane anyway.
Well, how did they find they're COVID positive back in California where they were flying from?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow, and they boarded the plane anyway.
Yep. So I'm guessing that's why that's top of mind for one of our.
I'm sure that someone in my organization has a better answer, but I don't know how we would stop that. I guess that's part of what the Hawaii state procedures are about. Is we're going to check when you come in, right?
Right. Exactly.
Test? And if even I guess even in Hilo and Kona, you're starting to do the antigen test, right? The quick test as you exit. That's the purpose, is to catch that. But I think one of the questions that I'm often asked is, do we see ourselves being involved in the testing process, actually administering tests? I hope not. It's complex enough running an airline with 750 aircraft and 4,000 flights a day, right? And weather and all this kind of stuff. I can't imagine getting into the administration, the execution of health services and having to track all that, right? So that's where I think the trusted testing partners comes in, and that's where I think consistent regulatory objectives are important.
Okay. One of the other things that the attendees want to know, and I was kind of remiss in asking because we were running out of time, but what do you think the airport of the future is going to look like? What kind of innovations, anything new and exciting, anything Hawaii should consider?
Well, I'm thinking about all the new airports that were being built as the pandemic was kicking in. It's hard to tell, honestly. I think it's going to be, as I said, a lot more self-service and a lot fewer ticket counters and that kind of thing, and much more self-service. At some point, I think that the security will be much more biometric based as opposed to what you're seeing today. I think what will be interesting, and this is I'm really way out there, and this is one of my next, forget that, I'm not going to say that, but I do think what will be interesting is to see how, we have long haul flying, medium haul flying, and short haul flying. And at some point, as you see all the advancements with drone technologies and pilotless aircraft and driverless cars and that kind of thing, if you think about, think forward, an airport is not like a 5-year kind of vision. You got to be thinking forward 25 years, 40 years. And I think that, some of the airports of the future, I think are going to have to be capable of handling air taxis, right? Things of that nature, connecting into traditional flying, fixed wing flying. So it just depends on the horizon. If you're talking about a close-in airport of the future, the next 5 years, more self-service. If you think about a 40-year view of what an airport could look like, I think it's going to be very VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing dependent. How does that evolve? So there's a wide spectrum of opinions on that. But
Okay, that sounds terrific. So I think we're getting close to out of time. I know that we have another, and I think we have another audience poll. So hopefully Sherry will be back with us very shortly. Let's see here. One of the polls is, have you flown Southwest Airlines? And so we've got yes, no, or planning to soon. So it'd be interesting to see how many of those are going to come on up.
Hey guys, be generous here.
So while they're voting on that, tell me a little bit about what makes Southwest Airlines different. It was interesting to me. I know one of the things I think I told Brad Hawkins when you guys first came into town is it was one of the most anticipated arrivals. And that when I talk to Southwest customers, a lot of times it's not customers, it's almost like a dedicated fan club. I mean, I met people on your first flight over that they had literally come to every new destination that you opened. They wanted to fly Southwest. And this is really unusual from a business standpoint. I've been covering statewide tourism for 20 years now. Okay, I guess they were pretty generous with you, Tom. So 68% say they have flown Southwest Airlines, 23% are a no, 9% are planning to soon. I don't know how that tracks with, your thoughts about how much penetration you've had in the Hawaii market, but.
The 5 people to go, and I got 100%. Pretty good. All right, so what was your question for me?
Well, I just want to know what's different, about Southwest.
That's easy.
In your opinion, how are you set apart from the other carriers that we have here? As you mentioned, the Southwest effect has made pricing a little bit more similar than we've seen in the past. But what, in your opinion, what are the major differences?
Well, I think you know what I'm going to say. The single biggest difference is our people. It just flat out is, and that's why we have fans. That's why our customer brand scores are the highest in the industry, not by a little bit, but by a lot. It's because our people are really great customer service folks, and they really care about people. I mean, anyone can buy a plane. Right? Anyone can, lease a gate at an airport. It really comes down to the product is differentiated. There's kind of a minimum threshold you have to meet in terms of being viable, but we're well beyond that. But the thing that differentiates is how someone feels. They feel welcomed, cared for, appreciated. They feel like we really care about them. And I think, there's story after story of our people going above and beyond to address an issue or to take care of somebody they don't even know. And, pretty much every month I get this packet of letters from customers. And it's a big email. I'll sit there and I'll read them. And the stories are just amazing. And you run the range of emotion from absolutely laughing that our people did this, and it was just so crazy and funny, to you shed a tear by the kindness. I mean, it's just, so you have this range of emotions reading this, but that's what's endearing. And I don't know how you replicate that. I don't know how you fake that. A lot of carriers try and emulate us, with the silly, antics by the flight attendants and such. And it just doesn't come across as authentic. It's like, oh, that's a knockoff. That's just, we're trying to be Southwest. It's something that we are very uniquely able to own. But it really is our people. And
Okay, I'm getting one more question from the audience, and people are wondering if you have any plans to fly from Honolulu to Japan, and if so, how far into the future that might be.
Well,
I know you don't like to answer these questions, but we're asking anyway. Maybe you could answer kind of vaguely.
well, I see us having plenty of work to do within the islands of Hawaii, back to continental North America, and that's where our focus is going to be. And we've got lots of growth within that realm. And you know, I think one of the things that is unique and really a powerful thing about Southwest is we don't dabble, right? So we go where we can get concentrated use of force. You know, I mean, really go in strong, which is what you've seen us do in Hawaii. So you know, having a flight or two to Japan doesn't really fit our model. We go in density, we go in with scale, and we go in to stay, and we go in to win. And just adding a few destinations isn't really our model.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Well, I think it's that to Sherry.
Okay, it was a pleasure being with you guys.
Thank you so much.
All righty. Well, thank you to both of you. You are amazing. Tom, thank you for your inspirational leadership, and for Southwest Airlines for your continued support and investment in Hawaii. Really appreciate that and what you do for the local economy and for our local employees. From 80,000 in-kind flights of first responders over the past 9 months as well, to finding time in your schedule again to join us this morning. We're so honored to have you. And then of course to Allison, always does a stellar job in moderating. So thank you, Allison.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, and keep up the great coverage and reporting on the economy as well as our visitor industry, as you know, is so instrumental to Hawaii. And lastly, thank you to our C-suite attendees for sharing your morning with the Chamber. Stay safe and strong out there, and wishing you and everyone a happy holiday and safe season. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.